Good afternoon. It's great to see you here this afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our first session of the year, Cohort 2 Mentors in the Primary Phase. Thanks for joining. It's lovely to see those cameras being turned on so that we can see your faces this afternoon. And up on the screen, there's just a few welcome instructions to help us get off to a good start. So we've asked everyone turns their cameras on. Please rename with your full name and school setting. So you can just hover over your face and click on the three dots and choose the rename option. And we've also got a registration poll, which you can see about a quarter of us have already signed in today. That will help us know who's in the room and make sure we record your registration. So thank you for joining us today. If there are particular questions you have about mentoring or the early career framework that you really hope will be addressed as part of this session, please do put them into the chat and we'll make sure we address them today. You can see Ben's having some trouble accessing the chat. Thanks for putting the poll. Thanks for putting that in the chat, Ben. That's helpful. We'll make sure that we've got your details from the chat to register you for you. So just a reminder, if you are able to rename yourself just by hovering over your face, choosing the three dots next to your name, and then using the rename option. You can also choose the participants option, just up on the top or the bottom, wherever your floating panel is. We'll just give everyone about a minute more to register, and then we'll get started. Thanks, Emily. We've got your details there in the chat. And Ruth's given some advice that if you are finding it hard to find the poll, if you click on poll in the floating dashboard, you may be able to access it there. Okay, we're coming up to about 4 minutes. So we'll just have about 30 more seconds for those last few people to register themselves. It's really nice to see so many different mentors from so many different schools in the room this afternoon. So thank you for finding the time to join us. Those people who are struggling to find the poll, we've got your name. If you put your name in the chat, your name and school, then we'll be able to register you that way. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Ruth to formally welcome us today. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks, Tessa. Hello, everyone. So my name's Ruth Smith, and I'm Director of East London Teaching School Hub, and it's really lovely to be here today with you all. I'm just going to spend 5-10 minutes talking to you a little bit about who and what East London Teaching School Hub is, in case you don't know, because you may be receiving communications from us and not entirely sure how everything fits together, and why we're here. So to begin with then, East London Teaching School Hub is one of 87 teaching school hubs that were designated by the Department for Education just over a year ago. And the national policy intention is that each region in the country has a teaching school hub. So our teaching school hub, East London Teaching School Hub, is responsible for Hackney and Tower Hamlets schools, and there's 176 state schools in that region. However, we do have schools in other boroughs working with us, just on the sort of boundaries with us, but primarily our job is to work with schools in our designated patch to make sure that we provide the highest quality teacher development opportunities, primarily the Early Career Framework, which you'll know is in its second year of national rollouts, and the National Professional Qualifications that were newly reformed. We're also an appropriate body service, and we have ITT responsibilities as well. But ultimately, the reason we exist is because we believe that together we change lives by providing the highest quality teacher development opportunities. We know, research knows, that it is the teacher in the classroom that makes the biggest difference to student outcomes. And therefore, good, highest quality, evidence-informed professional development is central to making sure that what teachers are doing in the classroom is the stuff that's going to make a difference. So that's why we're here. We'll just move on to the next slide. We operate with these three core values at the heart of what we do. So we are based at Mulby School for Girls in Tower Hamlets, but you won't really see our logo or our name anywhere because our job is to sit behind the scenes and connect lots of different experiences. I've lost the slides, Tessa. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but I'll carry on talking. So we have three core values. Collaboration. Our strapline is connecting Tower Hamlets and Hackney, and it's very much that. We bring all the expert teachers and leaders across our region together so that you all can benefit from the expertise. And likewise, bringing you together in this way means that you can connect with one another and share your knowledge and experience. We also value inclusion. We serve a very disadvantaged community, and disadvantage is very complex and means lots of different things. But we want to make sure that every student gets the best possible education, has the most choice and agency in their lives. And as mentors working in schools with high levels of disadvantage, I'm sure you share that sense of importance about inclusion. And finally, transparency, there they are again. We're really open and honest about everything we know. We sometimes get to hear things from the Department for Education a bit quicker than schools do. That's very rare. We usually find out it's exactly the same time as you. But our job is to try and help schools navigate the opportunities that are out there, the CPD opportunities, and also help navigate the implementation of brand new reforms, such as the Early Career Framework. And they're the three values that drive us. And the word hub really is central to the way we work. So you can see there that we see ourselves as just a conduit trying to connect various different organisations, people, so that everybody benefits from our collective knowledge and expertise. That's particularly so with primary early career, with the primary early career framework. So sometimes people get a bit confused about how it all works. So East London Teaching School Hub is sort of the umbrella that oversees the early career rollout. With primary, we have 5 local partners who are leading on primary provision, and that's the Letter Trust, HTSA, Hackney Education, with Primary Advantage working with them, and then Tower Hamlets Educational Partnership. And we've got colleagues from all of those partners here today in the call, and later you'll be breaking off into those groups. So you as a mentor in your school in ECT will belong to one of those partner groups. And most contacts will be with your local partner and the facilitators that you're working with. And we sit a kind of step back. We will send out communications occasionally. So we've got our 5 local partners. We also have over 20 school leaders working with us on the ECF. We currently, and this number is increasing, we have 126 schools in our patch working with us. There's 176, so a large proportion of schools are working with us. And today, because we've got 2-year groups now, if you like, of early career teachers and mentors, we have over 380 mentors and over 490 ECTs. So I hope you can see the scale and reach in which you can tap into. There's all of these different layers of connections and networks that you can benefit from as your own professional development as a mentor and to support your ECTs. So just to clear a few things around communication. So there's lots of ways you can communicate around what the ECF is. So the first port of call is between you and your ECT. That's the most important line of communication. You working with your early career teacher to make sure they really understand their learning or are making progress on their professional development entitlement. The next tier is your induction tutor. This person is crucial in your school. Every school has an induction tutor, and they are responsible for making sure that mentors and ECTs get their statutory entitlements to the time that should be designated to professional development, which is funded by the Department for Education, and that the standards are met. So they're more about assessment and compliance. Induction tutors have access to a lot of information, so they're a good person to know if you don't know already. UCL is important. They are the lead providers. They've produced all of the curriculum material and online UCL Extend. So if you have any niggles with UCL Extend, it's UCL that can primarily deal with that. We're here to help as well, but primarily UCL Extend and Institute. Then it's your local cluster. So it may be you're partnered with LETTER or FEP. Go to them next if your induction tutor is unable to help, and your local partner facilitator who you'll meet over the course of the year. And then finally, there's us, East London Teaching School Hub, who, like I said, we sit and work across all the different local partners and secondary as well to bring it all together. So they're the kind of tiers of communication for you to follow. And on that note, I'm going to hand back to Tessa, who's going to take you through the session today. It's lovely to see you all, and I hope you have a great year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruth. So Ruth and I work very closely alongside each other. Ruth's the director of East London Teaching School Hub, and I'm the deputy, so I lead on the work around the early career framework, the appropriate body services for East London Teaching School Hub, and also working now on the ITT provision as well. So far today, we've introduced our collaborative model and some of the roles and the relationships between the people who are working on this very collaborative partnership together. Later on in the session, there'll be a chance for you to meet the local cluster leader you'll be working with and find out a little bit more about what your session will look like and when it is, and to ask any questions to your local group. I'm going to introduce today the programme for mentors and provide you some practical guidance. It's a whistle-stop tour. I'm really hoping that most of you have engaged with the UCL online materials already. And so this is just a recap for you and some local extra additional information. So we know from research that teachers in supportive schools make really rapid progress in the first couple of years. And the impact that has on their students is even greater in schools where there's greater support and greater collegiality. This is based on some research done in the States. You can see here years of experience along that bottom axis, and then the estimated outcomes in terms of the students' achievements in maths. So this is primary colleagues in the room. On average, after 5 years of teaching, you can see there's a 20% gap in the achievement of students who are working in more supportive and collegial environments compared to those in less supportive and collegial environments. And that actually doubles over the next 5 years. Okay, so what we see is this rapid improvement in the first couple of years and then a tapering out, which is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? I thought that teachers got better the more experience they have. Well, it seems to be determined also by the kind of support that's happening in schools. So how can we ensure that every teacher, every stage of their career is having fantastic learning environments? Well, the DFE's answer to this is in part the early career framework, okay? Thinking about this 2-year entitlement to ensure that teachers' progression into their career is a sustainable one that's supported and where there's continuity from their initial teacher education. So those learn that and learn how-to statements that underpin the entitlement of the early career framework build on and follow on from their initial teacher education quite deliberately. This is part, of course, of the DFE's golden thread from initial teacher education through to early career professional development, and then finally through to national professional qualification. So we've got this overlap in language and continuity, this idea of it being a sustained pathway for teacher development. Because fundamentally, we are positioning mentors not just as critical colleagues in the classroom, not just people who make cups of tea and pick up the pieces when things go wrong, but as teacher educators, skilled professionals who are able to think about teachers' development. You're not only fantastic classroom teachers, but actually you're thinking about teachers' development too. So traditionally, I think mentors have often been positioned as kind of informal educators, and teachers might learn alongside through an apprenticeship model. Sometimes you've been stretched between the two positions of being both a mentor there for the development and an assessor in those old-fashioned NQT assessments that mentors were very part of. Now we're saying, actually, as mentor educators, you need to be engaging with research, engaging with your own development, thinking about teacher development, thinking about learning for your students as well as the teachers around you. That's quite a challenge. It can feel a bit of a steep learning curve, especially with the early career framework. There might be lots of new ideas in there that you're not familiar with. And that's where the early career program for mentors comes in. So the program offers a package not only for ECTs, but also for mentors, and that's over 2 years. 36 hours is funded. The funding goes directly to schools to fund your time on this program. So what does that look like? Well, you'll have your weekly mentor meetings. That bit isn't funded in year 1 because the expectation is that's been happening already in schools, but it is funded in year 2. The bits that are funded are your half-termly self-study, so your engagement with the research around mental pedagogy and mental development, and then termly online learning communities, or OLCs. These are the facilitated sessions that you'll work in small groups, working alongside our local partners each half term, and that will focus on educative mentoring and on-site mentoring. So it's around your approach as a mentor and thinking about teacher development. I want to break down what that looks like over the year. You can see that each half term, there's an opportunity to engage in a mentor development opportunity. We're here starting in autumn 1 with our welcome event, and later on in a few weeks' time, you'll be invited to your first online learning community. You'll have one of these each term. But in between, we're also offering an online collaborative self-study opportunity. So this is an optional alternative to the independent self-study that you will do as part of the programme. So just to be clear, the OLCs, the online learning communities, are local partner-led. They're a compulsory part of the programme, and they'll be every term. The online collaborative self-study, I hope it is what it says on the tin, is an online opportunity to engage with others to do your self-study. So rather than doing that on your own, we found last year that many mentors intended with all the best will in the world to engage with their self-study. They were interested in the material, but rightly, they prioritised their students, their children, they prioritised the ECT next, and that bit of development for themselves sat on the bottom of their to-do list. In fact, many lead providers, when they looked at, they could actually log and track when mentors were engaging with self-study. They found that it was in their weekends, their evenings, and their holidays. That's not a good model for you. That's not the kind of professional learning we want you to be engaged with, which is why we're timetabling these sessions for you as twilights every term to encourage you to sort of find that time and space, engage with that in a supportive way. So these are optional alternatives. And they're focused around preparing you for the module. What happens if you can't attend a session you've been invited? You keep talking about it being compulsory. Well, if you can't attend a session you've been invited to, we ask you to be proactive. We have sessions right across the week in primary and secondary for our online learning communities. So you can contact a local cluster lead and they'll be able to offer you an alternative. If you miss a session, your local partner will contact you and offer you an alternative or give you another way to catch up. If you keep missing sessions or we notice that you seem to not be engaging with the programme, the hub will be in touch with your induction tutor to raise concerns about your engagement. And that's because this is a funded programme. So the schools receive funding and the programme is funded, and we need to ensure that you're engaging fully. Ultimately, it's not going to have an impact on the ECTs if you're not engaging with it. All the material for the programme is on UCL Extend, and I hope by now the vast majority of people in this space have found access to it. If you're struggling to get access, and I will admit, in the spirit of transparency, I have more emails about access to UCL Extend than any other thing in my inbox. I've got 3 tips for you. The first is to try the password reset option. So it's very likely you have got an account, but perhaps not the login details. So let me show you how to do that. Let's do that now. So I'm on to UCL now, and I'm going to have to log myself out, which is probably a terrible thing to do. So I'm on the UCL Extend. I'm going into login, not UCL login. And I've got another trap for me here. I'm not going to create a new account because that creates all sorts of chaos. I'm going to presume I've already got an account, but I've forgotten my password. And I'm going to go to this click here. At this point, I'll enter my professional school address into the system and I'll search for that. If that is the registered email address, it will send a password reset to that address and I'll be able to log on. Okay. If it doesn't work, that suggests that your registered email address is not accurate. So there's a problem. So the next tip that I'd recommend is to talk to your induction tutor who registered you. They have access to the DFE online service, which is where they registered you and put your email address in. Check that there isn't a typo in it. Check they're not using a personal email account, and check that it's not a kind of previous school that perhaps you applied for your reference with or something. Okay, so check the details there. Your induction tutor can make those changes on DFE online service. But if you're facing problems, your induction tutor is facing problems, do contact us at the hub and we will check the details and give you further advice. So where should you be up to at this point? We're now in week 2 of the programme already. Can you believe it? So I hope that before you came today, you had the opportunity to log on to UCL Extend and you started to explore the handbook. I hope you've engaged too with the asynchronous video that we shared with you in the welcome information. If you haven't yet watched that, that's an hour's video from UCL. Do check our welcome emails and the invite you received for today's session, which had that link in it. And hopefully you've started now to explore module 1. Some advice on how to engage with those modules and which ones are going to be most useful to you. I find these 3 documents the most helpful for getting my head around what the module entails. So it can be very tempting on UCL Extend to go straight into the kind of weeks. But what I'd ask you to do is to step back and go to the module summary guide, which is a really helpful document, and I'll show you what that looks like. The module summary guide can be found in the module guidance area for each summary and gives you a week-by-week summary of the key things your ECT will be doing in their self-directed study. They should be engaging with self-directed study very regularly, about 4 times in this half term, and that's for about an hour in each session. And then coming to those mentor meetings, having thought and prepared and bringing some of that learning with you. Okay, so that right-hand side then, it tells you the key things that they have, that you'll be doing together in that mentor meeting. Week 1 was the first week of the programme, and there were 3 activities to engage with. In the mentor meeting, the focus was on your module audit. Again, this is a really useful thing to get ahead your sense of what the key module focus is. So it identifies all the early career framework standards, the learn that statements and the learn how to statements, and ask your ECT to self-assess against their knowledge in terms of whether they're emerging, developing, and secure. So this is an opportunity to identify their strengths and their areas of development and use that then to help you personalize and tailor the next few weeks in terms of that information. Okay, so really good place to start. And you'll revisit that module at the end, you'll revisit the audit, sorry, at the end of each module and again in the second year of the programme. In the week 1 folder, you'll also have noticed some mentor self-directed study. We ask that you engage with that before you come to your facilitated session. So every half term, you'll find mentor self-study. That will always be in the first week's folder, week 1 or week 2 sometimes. And you need to be reading that and engaging with it before you come to the online learning community, which will offer you a chance to discuss that. And so we're here in week 2. This week, we've got our self-directed, the ECTs have some self-directed study, and then they'll bring some of that information into your mentor meeting. Now, those of you who've already looked will be well aware that each mentor session and each self-directed study session has a range of different activities that are suggested. You know, in this self-study, ECT self-study section, it suggested observing a colleague for 5 minutes, discussing displays and values with another colleague, scripting a 5 minutes routine, and analysing something else I've forgotten with a colleague. I think it's analysing and discussing the values, isn't it, with a colleague. We've got so many different ideas here. Okay, and I'd encourage all of you to pick and choose the ones that you think are going to be most useful to your ECT based on your knowledge of their strengths and areas of development, based on your knowledge of the context of where they're working, and on your knowledge of how beginning teachers develop. Okay, so just as you would be responsive in the classroom to the students in front of you, just as you would think about how to adapt examples to make them more relevant and meaningful, and at the right pitch for your children, we ask that you do the same for your ECTs, okay? ECTs shouldn't be spending more than an hour on each self-directed study session, so they may need to pick and choose. And your mentor meetings as well should be about 45 minutes a week, with about 10 to 15 minutes for you to prepare for them, to make sure you're thinking about how to use that time in a productive and structured way. So I've talked about flexibility a little bit, but I also really want to emphasize the importance of showing your engagement. At the end of each section on UCL Extend, you'll find a button that asks you to click to show that you've completed that session. Let's have a look at that now. Yes. Okay. Let's have a look at that now. So we're opening up UCL Extend, and I'm going into modules 1 to 5, which is where the content for year 1 is. I've got all the modules for this content for this year up. I'm going into the module 1 tab. And then I can see I've got the week by week sort of envelopes or folders for all the materials are. Down here, I've also got some guidance for mentors. And I've got the summary guide that I mentioned and the progress tracker that I mentioned, both for ECTs and mentors. So those key overall big picture, sort of medium-term plans are all in this big welcome folder here at the top. Okay, let's click into week 1 and look at the mentor self-directed study. So in week 1, we've got our module audit. You can download that, and I encourage you to save a copy of that because you will return to that with your ECT at the end of this half term and again in year 2. And we've got our mentor self-directed study. So we've got, this is the online version. I've got the opportunity to listen to that as well, rather than read the research and practice summary. But once I've engaged with this, at the bottom here, doesn't have it because I've already done it. Let's find another example. I've done my homework, you see, I'm very good. Let's go to week 3. And we'll pretend we're in ECT. Okay. Here we go. So this is the button I'm talking about here. So we're clicking there to show our engagement. Okay. So Lots of different elements in there. And just in that little demonstration there, I kind of showed you a range of the different resources that are available. And I think it can feel at times like there's so many things, it's hard to keep track of them. This module tracker is very helpful in reminding you of the key activities. So this one here is the mentor log. There is another version for the ECT as well that you can look at. So you can see that in week 1, there's the invitation to engage with your self-directed study. This needs to be completed between then and your online learning community, okay, which is in a couple of weeks' time. Some of you, it's next week. Every week, you've got those mentor session materials that are available. You've got your online learning community once a term. And this training session here is the conference you're attending today. At the end of each half term, we'll ask you to complete an end of module completion form. And that's giving you an opportunity to give us feedback on your experiences and your progress over the half term. That feedback goes to your facilitators, it goes to the hub, but also UCL. So it's really rich, valuable opportunity. I want to say a couple of words about your role in terms of development versus assessment. And this ties in with some of the key ideas from the self-study that some of you may well have engaged with, and for others that haven't yet, you'll engage with soon and then pick up in your OLC very soon. And that's the idea of being an on-site mentor who is non-evaluative and non-judgmental. In terms of roles within school, your work working alongside the early career teacher is primarily based around the early career framework-based program of learning. It's about the learning and the development. Your induction tutor will work with the head teacher and the early career teacher in relation to the assessment and recommendation of QTS, those statutory assessments that are completed alongside the appropriate body. In this area, that might be THEP, Hackney Education, or East London Teaching School Hub. So there's a real separation now in the statutory guidance between the development and the learning opportunities that ECTs should be experiencing, and the mentor is leading those, and the assessment, which is led by the induction tutor. So the encouragement is very much that mentors should be keeping on side and avoid judgmentoring, as Hobson describes it. And I won't tell you much more about that. You'll save that for you in your self-study and OLC. Through this model of mentoring, we'll also talk about how you can ensure that the programme is individualised, developmental and empowering. And that for me is about the contextualisation and flexibility. It's about you knowing the young people that they're working with, you knowing the schools, the context that they're working in, and being able to help them to navigate the material to make it relevant to them. It's also about recognising the flexibility that's there. So not going through every page and every resource and every week sessions, really kind of without thought about the ECT's need, but they're doing it responsively and flexibly, choosing the bits that are most relevant to them, ensuring that it has impact on them. UCL recently shared their wellbeing charter. I think there's some really important messages in here about how to ensure this programme supports our ECTs and our mentors to really thrive on the programme. And so it ultimately supports retention in the workforce, which is why the whole programme was designed. Okay, so things like, all the resources are available to you at any time. Okay, as you gain familiarity with the programme over time, you'll be able to identify which pieces are most useful to your ECT, to recognise that it's there to guide you. These are a repertoire of resources rather than being things, a kind of rule book that you have to go through. Other things that you might really want to know is that you can download all the materials. So if you're the type of mentor who likes to print things out, have your folders or have electronic copies in a shared folder that you can share with your induction tutor, that's available to you as well. Okay, with the caveat, I'd ask that you show your engagement by clicking that you've completed the activities as and when you have. There's some further ideas here about the importance of flexibility, reviewing and tailoring. the resources for you as well. So in terms of the next steps on the programme, I'd like you to think about, are there any questions that we haven't been able to address today that you have? And think about who might be the right person to ask those to. Is it your induction tutor in school? Is it the local partner? Because in a couple of minutes' time, we'll move into local partner breakout groups and you'll have the chance to ask them. Or do you have a question for the hub? And there's our email address at the bottom. Really encourage you, if you haven't already, to start to identify a weekly rhythm for the ECT self-study and the mentor meetings. See them as something that comes together. It may be helpful for you to, for example, have a little look ahead at the ECT's next self-study at the end of each mentor meeting. So you're planning when they're going to do that, helping them to identify which bits they're really going to focus on so that they're not overwhelmed and trying to do that on their own. Okay, getting into that rhythm. When is their protected period for that? Remembering that all ECTs should have 10% timetable reduction, and that includes their ECT independent study and their mentor meeting, as well as their sessions. If you haven't already, please do engage with the asynchronous recording. I think it gives you a really good overview of the year. It goes into far more detail than I've been able to in this short period today. And if you haven't read that self-study and you're not sure about Hobson's models of on-side mentoring and judge mentoring, then do please engage with that, because that will give you a really nice opportunity to discuss with other mentors and colleagues at the online learning community that will be coming up next. So I'm going to ask Anissa to open up the breakout rooms. There'll be a range of breakout rooms for each local partner. So there'll be, if you're working with LETTA, TSA, Hackney Education, Primary Advantage, in those local breakout rooms, you'll be able to introduce yourselves and meet the local clusters and facilitators, find out a little bit more about when your next session is, and ask any questions. If you know which local partner you're working with, you should be able to now choose which room you would like to go into. If you're not sure, if you stay in this main room, Anissa, my colleague, and myself will try and get you into the right place as quickly as we can. So in terms of getting into those rooms, which I can now see are open.
Tessa, can I just interfere again at this point and just say, if you've been getting emails from Alison, click THEP.
So Alison is THEP, Helen Ruskin is LETTA, Kate Roberts, HTSA, Sandra is Primary Advantage, and Emma Burton or Lily Gould is Hackney Education. I can see about half the group have been